the running community is quite possibly, and secretly, one of the funniest communities on earth. Welcome to the Thickness Podcast. Hey guys, how are we? Welcome back to the Thickness Podcast. It's been a while, but I am still on track for my one podcast a month, which was my goal for the year and the podcast. So one a month minimum. And we're still in May while we're recording it, so I still have time to get this out before the end of the month. But I hope you're all keeping well, and I hope you've enjoyed the last few episodes. We had great news. So yeah, Adam Sweeney, a previous guest, the summit has become the youngest Irish person to summit Mount Everest. It's fantastic news. Along with him and the other teammates, Jason unfortunately didn't make it up due to an ankle injury, and I know he's heartbroken about that, but I know he's also so elated and so proud of the guys, and hopefully we'll contact Adam when he's home and he's settled and he's done all the things that he has to do, and hopefully we'll get him on to have a wee chat about the whole experience, because I am sure there's some amount of stories to come from all that there. But yeah, we have been thinking about what next to talk about on the podcast, and I do have some guests lined up, but felt like doing a solo episode here. So I signed up for something that still sounds completely unreasonable every time I verbalize it and I say it out loud. So on the 1st of August 2026, I'm running the Blue Stack Ultra Marathon. Why not? 50 kilometers. And then a couple of months after the October bank holiday weekend, I'll be running the Dublin Marathon for the Irish Heart Foundation. I got a place with them and their charity team, so I'm fundraising at the moment for that. But here's the important context before anybody starts assuming that I'm an experienced runner or anything like that. I have never raced further than 10 kilometers in my life. And I say raced, I've never ran in a race more than 10 kilometers. Not a half marathon, not a marathon. Definitely not an ultra marathon. 10k is currently the furthest distance that I have raced. I have 18k is the furthest distance that my body and mind have agreed to cooperate on, for my training and that. So, naturally, me being me, my brain looked at that information and said, yeah, let's do 50. Why not, man? And honestly, the funniest part of this whole thing, it wasn't even beginning during a training session or, any kind of dawning fitness moment. It actually started in Kathmandu in October when we came back in from the Mirror Peak trek. Myself and Liz and Brian were sitting having beers, and we were talking about future goals and future plans and expeditions and challenges and stuff like that. The usual nonsense that happens when people have a few beers and we're reflecting on what we've just done and what we want to do. So Brian and Liz were throwing out, Island Peak, Akanagua, stuff like that there. Career stuff, more travel plans, fitness challenges and stuff like that. And I think Liz asked me, and I was like, I have an awful want on me, to do a distance run. And somewhere in that conversation, the ultras came up. It wasn't straight to, a marathon. It was nearly straight to the ultras. because Liz has a background in that. And that already tells you, what the environment was like, the drinks and stuff like that there. Marathons still exist in the realm of normal difficult. And ultra marathons somehow live somewhere beyond all of that. For anybody that doesn't know, a marathon is 42.2 kilometers. And an ultra marathon is basically classed anything above marathon distance. And the jump between the two is apparently way bigger psychologically than it sounds numerically. The jump is 42 generally on 250. Road marathons are still structured around performance. The normal things. Pacing, your split times, nutrition plans, efficient you are. A lot of people call it controlled suffering. And then there's the crowds. And there's water stations every few kilometers, and there's people cheering, and there's music. The streets are closed off in the cities for runners, and that's a carnival affair. People are out celebrating. It's hard. Of course it's hard, but it's organised hard. And ultras apparently are different. And they are supposed to feel less like racing, more like negotiating with yourself for hours at a time. Contacts the blue stack. Ultra 50k is you've got 10 hours to finish it. So especially with trail runs where you're dealing with, you're dealing with hills, you're dealing with terrain and weather, fatigue and isolation. At some point, almost everybody slows down. Sometimes you'll walk. Sometimes your body will start arguing with you. Sometimes your brain will start inventing reasons for you to quit. Road marathons will test performance, where ultramarathons seem to test your identity, who you are at your. And they're less about how fast are you, more about how long can you stay mentally composed here now when things stop being comfortable. And sitting there that night in Kathmandu after the drinks and listening to Liz on about the carry away ultra, and, the ones that she's done. And the people pushing themselves into these really unfamiliar territories and places in their soul and depths of them. Something really stuck with me about all that. Not because I thought, I can definitely go and do that. I think the conversation I said to Brian, I'm not doing a road marathon because it's too hard on my knees. And the ultra, I like the sound of that again. If you have to walk, you have to walk. If you have to crawl, you have to crawl. It's almost the opposite of, it was the opposite of what I was thinking. I was like, it just sounded so far outside what I was currently doing. And I think sometimes those are the goals that grab me, grab on to people the hardest, the ones that sort of, expose a massive gap between who you are now and who you need to become. Actually hit that goal, pull it off. Because right now I am not an ultra runner. No shape nor feed of it. I'm a guy who has occasionally done 5k runs as part of cutting weight for jiu-jitsu and stuff like that there. They all 10k at a push. But the idea of the ultra stayed in my head after the hike. and the expedition and Nepal. And then I eventually realised something, you know, kept waiting to feel ready for difficult things before starting them. And this mindset of you need to be prepared for, that's a myth, I think. You know, I kind of have this in my head that you don't actually wake up confident enough. You don't suddenly become the finished version of yourself before beginning any of these things. It's the same as the old adage with jiu-jitsu. Oh, I have to get in shape before I start jiu-jitsu. You hear that a lot. It's not going to happen. You'll get in shape while you're training. You start first. Your confidence then slowly catches up with you. So now here we are. I'm in the middle of my training. I'm using the Run app as my coach and my guide. I'm running 3 days a week while I'm still training jiu-jitsu 4 days a week. Still trying to get as much Brazilian jiu-jitsu and allow me still catch up my run. Balancing both of these is being interesting at the moment. Distance running and jiu-jitsu almost feel like opposite philosophies. Jiu-jitsu is explosive, it's reactive, it's chaotic. Running is just repetitive, patient, controlled. Jiu-jitsu, you're constantly solving problems in real time. Human chess, you've heard it before. You're constantly solving problems against another person coming at you. And in running, eventually the problem becomes your own mind. What's in here? What's in here? And I'm discovering that really, really quickly. You know, that endurance training is so much psychological as it's physical. You know, some runs are feeling incredible. I ran 18k for my long run last week, which is the longest distance I ran. It felt fantastic. Some runs feel like punishment, absolute punishment. And sometimes they're 5, 6, 7k. You know, they feel like the hard one. Some days you feel light and strong, like you're the wind. You know, other days your legs feel like somebody's tied ropes behind you and they're pulling on it, you know, or that they're 30 years older than you are. And I ain't no spring chicken by any sense of me. But there is something, you know, really addictive about seeing your improvements and, you know, stacking them up over time. You know, a slightly easier pace, lower heart rate, hovering faster, or running a distance that, you know, used to feel impossible without stopping. Like, I mean, running 18k without stopping for me was huge last day. I was chuffed with myself, you know. But maybe that's just a part of why running has exploded over the last few years as well. Because it gives people concrete, visible proof that they're improving. But they're improving in a world that feels, at this stage, it's chaotic and uncertain, all that's going on globally. But you can literally measure your progress. Literally measure. And honestly, I think, you know, I understand the appeal of that. You know, I'm hugely data driven, so, you know, that appeals to me. You know, running did seem foreign to me, and it was a thing that I had just tacked in just to cut weight. You know, I never understood people waking up at 5 in the morning to go run for 2 hours in the rain. And now, watching marathon documentaries, an ultra documentary, documentaries on Cam Haines, David Goggin. So I'm researching running shoes, so I'm buying a top class car. I'm so emotionally invested in all these things, electrolyte drinks, protein, stuff that I had already a knowledge on, but now I'm buried in it. And somewhere along the line, running has stopped being this niche thing reserved for elite athletes or super ultra disciplined fitness people. It really is a step to being, and has stepped out of that into being a real community. It's a lifestyle, and it's an identity, it's self-improvement, it's mental health, and it's social media. And social media massively accelerated that shift, I think. It's not hard to see it when you open up Instagram or TikTok. And you have apps like Strava, which turned running into a really shared experience. Really, really did. People posting routes that they'd ran, races, the progress and their struggles, their bad runs and their great runs. And I love clicking on there now and seeing guys that I know that have been running for years and looking at their distance and going, oh, that was an easy pace. And I'm going, that was easy. That's me. Run, a mad job. And then run clubs, some cities' run clubs are basically, they've turned into the modern replacement for going out drinking. Because the generation that are coming up now, that this is their lifestyle, And then you add the technology into the mix, which, for me, I love it, The Garmin watches, you've got the Apple watches, Whoop bands, tracking your heart rate, your VO2 max scores, your recovery metrics. Running has become nearly gamified. Most human, we love measurable progress. I love measurable progress. I love the data aspect of it. I love looking at my Garmin. I love seeing the numbers improve. I love tracking, being consistent. I love the feeling, to be able to look at the thing at the end of the day or at the end of the week and see, look at this is where your tangible efforts have made a real difference. And running has delivered that constantly, But maybe the biggest reason people have been drawn to endurance sport now is because modern life has become really mentally fragmented, Everybody's attention is divided all the time. And running simplifies everything. And it's like everything is hard. Running, you put your shoes on, move forward, one foot after another. That's it. It's a very simple concept. But there's something incredibly grounding about that simplicity, And almost every runner I speak to describes running less like exercise and more like therapy. A lot of people turn around and say, this is my thinking time, this is my processing time, my escape time. You can use that time that you're out on the road, because it is just you. You're concentrating on your breathing, but you have your thoughts. You can go work through personal stuff, work stuff, whatever. But, it is that time for you. But I have to say this, the running community is quite possibly, and secretly, one of the funniest communities on earth. Alongside all the motivational stuff and the advice, you also get such a brutally honest insight and survival tips from experienced running. I had asked for a few tips, and one person messaged me saying, well, that was it. Don't try anything new before the race day. Fair. Never trust a fart. And definitely bring Vaseline. And that is apparently elite endurance wisdom. Another one said, Don't think about 50 kilometers. Think about 10 5Ks. Break it down. And really, that advice feels useful long, far out ahead of just beyond running. Like, that can be used for so much things and so many things. Most overwhelming things become manageable when you stop staring at the entire mountain and you just focus on the next steps or the next check. And you do break it down into these more minuscule, sort of actionable things. Same person also said, start without music. Save it for when things get difficult and it becomes a reward. And that one really, really struck with me. Because I had started running a while back, last or a couple of years ago, without any music running in my ears, and I was really loving it. But that stuck with me because endurance seems, less about avoiding the discomfort, but more about learning how to manage it and leaning into it and feeling it and suffering with it, But I've also learned things I genuinely never knew before entering this world. The running world. That is. I had Anna from DT Fitness do those marathons all over the place. Message just get a good gait analysis, get good running socks, build up your aerobic base slowly. This bit of advice was protect your nipples at all costs. And I just thought in that, like, running is an incredibly strange culture. But one line I had heard recently really stayed with me. Actually, Anna that had said it too. It was run the first half with your head and the second half with your heart. And that, the more I think about it, the more that feels like life advice. Disguised as marathon advice, Run the first half with your head and the next with your heart. Deeper I get into endurance sports and, the expeditions and the marathons, the more I think people are craving difficult things again. And I can really, I can feel that in myself. Looking for real things, earned things. Not looking for instant gratification. Not the dopamine scroll. Not shortcuts. Something that demands consistency, that demands you to be you. Because nobody accidentally becomes capable of running 50 kilometers. You can't just walk out the door and do that. Most people can't. You slowly have to build up to that person, And honestly, that's the part that really, really interests me in documenting, Not the race day, not the medal, not the photo, Those things are great, but the transformation that happens during this process, this time now where you're getting up in the mornings and you're going out and pissing around. You don't want to, but you're doing it. I can already feel it changing, in how I think. And the patience that you need to add, the discipline. The ability to stay uncomfortable without panicking, which I have from jiu-jitsu, which I love that. The understanding that meaningful progress is usually slow and it's so repetitive and it's so unglamorous. And again, it's so similar to jiu-jitsu. And that's where the reward, the real reward, lives, So look at, right now, I'm still at the beginning of it, 5-6 weeks into it, 10 weeks out from the ultra. I'm a guy who's never ran race. say on 10k, trying to become someone capable of finishing an ultramarathon. And honestly, the gap between who you are now and who you need to become, well, that's where all the interesting stuff lives. That's where the growth lives. And that is where, hopefully, come the 1st of August, I'll be putting up an Instagram post saying, "Blue Stack Ultra Marathon finished it." Okay, guys. Talk to you all soon. Look after yourselves.